cane, something like that. Energy cane, which is a specially developed variety that is tremendous because you can use the sugar cane to produce first generation bioethanol, and then you can use the bagasse and the straw, which in this particular case are specially made to produce more biofuel or electricity by burning it or um, other uses. Of course, in Brazil, you have potential areas for sugarcane production. The country is huge in terms of area. Some areas are forbidden. For example, the Amazon rainforest, Pantanal, and the Atlantic forest. What remains of it, by the way. There are other preservation areas, and there are areas that are not suitable because they have slopes that are bigger than 12%. But you see that the blue areas are absolutely fantastic for the plantation of sugarcane. And there are many areas which are either average or low, but which can still be used. Nowadays, sugarcane is responsible for 14%, 14.3% of the various crops that we plant. It uses 3.4% of the available agricultural land in Brazil. Half of this is for food, for sugar. Half of it is for bioethanol. Now, the good news is that Brazil has nearly 40 million hectares of degraded pastures. There was an article in the paper years ago written by Rogério Cerqueira Leite, who's a physicist from Campinas. He claimed that our cows are lonely because they occupy, I don't know, 1 hectare. You have and this is obviously something that's not done anywhere else. We have so much land that our cows do not communicate. They have a lot of area, so they're lonely. And of course, with modern techniques, you can improve the efficiency of cattle raising, and of course, liberate areas that could be used for sugarcane plantations and so on. Brazil, of course, has had a tremendous success in implementing an ethanol program. And there, this curve shows you why. We've had various oil crises along the years, and therefore we had to resort to something which was renewable and less polluting. And of course, because we have sugarcane, which is a blessing, you can see that the ethanol production has been growing over the years, and of course the world oil prices have also been growing. So as long as this remains, we will probably be resorting to bioethanol. Nowadays, for example, if you look at all the Brazilian light vehicles, then you can notice that those that are only running on alcohol are sort of disappearing. On the other hand, the flex fuel cars, those that can use any mixture of gasoline and alcohol and ethanol, are now about half. Then you have a percentage of diesel and gasoline. The sugarcane industry in Brazil has very impressive numbers. It has about 430 mills. Sugarcane producers, roughly 70,000. Jobs that are directly related, 1.2 million. It is responsible for $48 billion a year, part of our gross national product. Exports 15 billion. It's the first sugar producer in the world. It accounts for 25% of the world production of sugar and 50% of the world's exports. And it's the second world bioethanol producer. The first one is, of course, the United States. There's an advantage in Brazil as far as the availability and competitiveness of renewable raw materials, especially 2 chains, carbohydrates and natural fats and oils. As far as carbohydrates, for example, we have 30% of the world production of sugarcane, 40% of corn. And these generate bagasse and straw, which, as you will see, can be used for production of biofuels and for other purposes as well. As for natural oils and fats, Brazil's share of soybeans is about 18% of the world output. We already have working 2 plants that produce second-generation bioethanol. Of course, I feel ashamed to say this, but you guys know this much better than I do. But what these plants do is they use enzymatic hydrolysis to break the cellulose into fermentable sugars and therefore produce bioethanol. This is very important because it increases enormously the number of possibilities of using biomass to produce biofuels. So you can actually use wood or anything that has cellulose in it, okay? And thus, the present production of bioethanol will be tremendously increased if you start using not just the core of the sugarcane, but also the bagasse and the straw that are normally discarded or burned. And so these two industrial plants, one in Alagoas called Grambio, and Raízen, this is in São Paulo, they're already producing second generation bioethanol. And they also generate electricity from biomass in industrial waste. There are two other plants that are under construction, and together they're expected to produce 140 million liters of biofuel per year. So the industrial biotechnology sector has advanced and also included areas like diesel, biodiesel, and biokerosene, for example. In fact, there are some projects. There's a big project to produce biojet fuel that involves the three major aircraft producing companies in the world, which are Airbus, Boeing, and our own Embraer. Okay, this is a joint project. FAPESP, the state foundation in São Paulo, supporting this, the agency that supports science in São Paulo, is funding part of this project. And besides Rhodia and Grambio, they have created a joint venture to develop bio-N-butanol, which is a compound used in the manufacture of paints and solvents. And there are other examples of, green chemistry products being already coming to the market. This is to give you an idea of the Brazilian energy matrix. On the left, you have non-renewable. On the right, you have renewable. So we are talking about a share which is almost 40% of renewable sources, 60% non-renewable. And if you compare this to the world, the average for the world of renewable sources is about 13.8%, whereas in the OECD countries it's even lower. So Brazil there is in an interesting situation. The industrial power consumption shows clearly a trend to move away from the polluting products that come from oil and natural gas. And the share, for example, in Brazil in 2012 has electricity, bioenergy, and so on and so forth in such a way that you see that the percentages of renewable energy are normally higher than the equivalent for the world. This just, it's a little repetitive. Brazil produces a number of crops that are genetically modified, and the percentage varies from state to state. That shows you a distribution, for example, in the various states for the production of corn, for the production of cotton, soybean, and so on. And the important thing is that in 2013, for the first time, genetically modified crops surpassed the non-transgenic crops in Brazil by area. Many companies are involved in this, and here you see our own Embrapa produces a transgenic variety of beans, as well as soybeans. Other companies, well-known companies, are also in corn and cotton. As for the chemical industry in Brazil, this shows you how much profit that industry makes. It's about $156.7 billion in 2014, and distributed in different areas. You can see that. And that shows you that there's a growth over the years to arrive at the number that I just quoted. So the investment opportunities in the production of chemicals will probably take us from what we have today to 15 to 35 billion dollars of revenue by 2030. In fact, there is a sort of a wave, a series of waves in the 1920s, for example. Chemical industry was dealing with the control of accidents and occupational hazards. Then pollution, industrial pollution and residues. Then better plants and cleaner plants. Then better products, and finally, up in the future, we'll have processes and products that are truly sustainable. And you are going from chemical production to chemical safety to green chemistry. And as you move on, you went from carbochemistry to petrochemistry, and nowadays to nanochemistry and biochemistry. In 8 years, in yet another sector, which is the pharmaceutical industry, Brazil has experienced a tremendous growth. It went from 10th to 6th world pharmaceutical market, and by 2016, just next year, it will probably be the 4th in the world. And here's the distribution of the most important laboratories. 4 of those are Brazilian laboratories. I think the Aché, EMS Pharma, Europharma, Medley. Those are the ones that I can identify. There have been a number of partnerships for productive development, many partnerships involving various entities that have, in the end, developed 97 products, 66 medications, 7 vaccines, 19 health products, and 5 are still in the R&D phase. 79 partnerships, 19 public laboratories and 60 private ones, 8.9 billion in public purchases and 4.1 billion per year saved thanks to these joint ventures, so to speak. We still have problems to face. For example, the time it takes for the approval of clinical research in the country. There you see that we hold the record, 1 year, right? As compared to, for example, South Korea, it's about 30 days. So this is something that we definitely have to improve, and it's part of the bureaucratic load that we carry. It generates 40 billion a year, clinical research. Whereas in Brazil, this number is 139 million. So we're talking about an order of magnitude that we can grow. Nowadays, we're 1% in the world. And Brazil is now experiencing a first generation of pharmaceutical biotech products, like insulin, growth hormones, etc. Whereas in the world, the second generation is already underway and will probably be the future of the pharmaceutical industry, especially monoclonal antibodies. So that because the first patents of the second generation biotechnology will expire by 2020, we will probably see a tremendous race to register, develop, and produce so-called biological, not new products and processes, with tremendous change in terms of the world scenario for the pharmaceutical industry. Before I finish, let me make some outright propaganda here. Okay. I'm going to talk about the Amazon Biotechnology Center. This is an institution that was founded years ago and which never took off, right? And now, because INMETRO, the place that I work for, INMETRO is the National Institute of Metrology, Quality, and Technology of Brazil. It is the equivalent of NIST in the United States, PTB in Germany, BAM. Germany has PTB and BAM, LNE in France, or you name it. So there are metrology institutes, CRIS in Korea, metrology institutes throughout the world. This center, of course, is dedicated to biotechnology. It's located in the Amazon, in Manaus, capital of the state of Amazon. So it's very close to tremendous biodiversity. And now INMETRO, because it does have a whole sector that's dedicated to metrology for the life sciences, or if you want, biotechnology and so on, reference materials, biological reference materials, and all of that. It's been called to help in actually, pushing forward this project. There you see it. I was there yesterday. There's a, they say that part of the problem here is a political problem. There are several animals there on the wall, right? And because this was inaugurated by Fernando Henrique Cardoso, our president, he put a toucan on one side and a toucan on the other side. And when the government came with Lula, who's from another party, the toucan is, by the way, the symbol of the party of Fernando Henrique Cardoso. So the joke goes that, that's why the center never took off, because the two toucans, made the government stay away from it. That's not true, but the fact is that for many years the center was there, the building is there, right? And now it is trying to recover the very reason why it was founded, which is to somehow bring innovation into the picture through research and development. The research lines that are being pursued there are herbal products, cosmetics, and aromatics. Natura, for example, is a potential partner. They already had projects with the center. Food, biofuels, and new biodiversity materials, as well as waste recovery. The number that I promised you, which is amazing. You probably have heard that the physicists of the world worked for more than 100 years in developing the so-called standard model of the interactions, right? Gravitational, well, gravitation is kind of special, but anyway, electroweak and strong interactions are formulated in sort of a joint model, the standard model. And we were very proud of this model because it was checked against experiment in many, many instances. The most recent one was the discovery of the Higgs boson, for example, which was predicted by this. But some years ago, somebody discovered that we only know 5% of the universe. The 95% remaining, whatever is in the universe, is either dark matter or dark energy, and we call them dark because we don't know what it is. There are many proposals, but we don't know. Okay? Amazingly, as far as the Amazon is concerned, only 5% of the biodiversity of the Amazon is known. So the estimate is that there's 95% out there to be discovered and dealt with. And so this may reserve fantastic surprises as far as drug development, green chemistry, and so on. Of course, there are a number of enabling factors if you really want to create an environment that will be conducive to innovation in biotechnology. And there they are: human capital, infrastructure for R&D, intellectual property production, regulatory environment, technology transfer framework, market and commercial incentives, and of course, legal security, the rule of law. If you have a combination, this combination, you are bound to succeed. We're far yet from it, but most countries that have been successful followed 6 recommendations. They identified the biotechnology sector as an area of strategic importance, something which is, I think, is underway in Brazil. They created then a national blueprint, a way to measure performance, a way to recognize and use existing best practices, leverage national capabilities, and enhance local and international cooperation. This meeting here, right, which is an impressive meeting because it's interdisciplinary, it's very high quality, it covers a tremendous spectrum, right, from the few talks that I've sat through, and it adds international cooperation to the picture, which apparently is essential, right? Brazil, for many years, for example, has been a pioneer in using genetically modified crops and developing agricultural biotechnology. And then Embrapa is a company that we're very proud of because it has contributed tremendously. Embrapa has about 39 different agencies scattered throughout the country and has contributed tremendously to the improvement in growing soybeans and whatnot, saving money in fertilizers because the group of Joanna Dobereiner, for example, developed nitrogen fixing plants that saved, I don't know how many billion, about $1.5 billion a year in fertilizers. So, yeah, I think that, who was it that was talking about the fertilizers? The colleague from Ecuador, right? Well, here, there has been a decrease in the use of fertilizers thanks to that. Fertilizers are a problem because most of them contain nitrogen, and therefore they produce a lot of nitrous oxide, which is a highly has a global warming factor of about 300 when compared to carbon dioxide. And it has been, so one of the things that's underway here in Brazil is that biotechnology has been identified as a national strategic priority back in 2003, and that ended up in a decree in 2007 that outlined a national policy for biotechnology. So as a sort of a general comment, notice that over 30 years, much of the money that was generated in the world relied on the price of digital processing. That's the rule. It has a name, I forget which name it is. But the price drops by half every 18 months, while the power of the digital device doubles. So this is an amazing growth. If you translate that into dollars, then you understand why you have iPhone 6, 7, 8, 9, and nowadays you don't even know what the iPhone does, right? Because it does so many things that it would take you, I don't know, 2 PhD programs to actually learn how to operate the full capability, right? In 2006, for example, only 6% of the world's data were digital. Today, 99%. We're talking less than 10 years. Okay? You go from 6 to 99%. This is amazing, right? No wonder people don't go to restaurants to talk to each other. They go to text in their cell phones, right? I remember my younger son once invited us to, it was my birthday, so he invited us to go to a coffee, a nice coffee that was supposed to be in the fort of Copacabana. Copacabana has a beautiful fort, and they have a fantastic breakfast there. But it turns out that we went there and it was closed. So we went to another place. And then I saw a couple that arrived, young couple, they were probably married. They sat, did not exchange one word, and started texting their cell phones. Maybe they were texting each other to save their voice or something. But this is how it goes. The world is completely digital. In the countries that surf this wave, the digital wave, for example, Korea, Singapore, right? They really made a lot of money, right? No wonder that Samsung is, so big in the market. So once the cost decrease and production increases, in the life sciences, a similar phenomenon may take place. So the digital codes were used by nerds. Today, they represent a ubiquitous language used by the whole world. For example, when Gabriela talked about the computing needs and so on and so forth, nobody said anything. It's natural, right? Fantastic computational facility or capability is something that you take for granted, right? And more so, depending on the type of problem that you're dealing with, in some areas, you're sort of replacing not replacing because this is really dangerous, but at least making a sort of a preview of what the experiment will give you by doing computer simulations. And that includes physics. So-called Monte Carlo simulations have been used for a couple of decades to simulate what you expect from experiment. So this is a trend that's critical to Brazil because many of our product sectors where we are competitive and experts are already being changed by the life sciences. And so the different policies followed by Brazil and Argentina with regard to genetically modified crops, for example, organisms, is an example of this. Brazil, for example, well, in the case of this particular case with Argentina, Brazil was imposing several restrictions to genetically modified crops and so on and so forth. Argentina started doing it. And what happened? They crossed the border. And then, of course, quickly people here realized that they had to do something about it. And the situation evolved quite rapidly. So the life sciences are now beginning to permeate change, drive more and more areas of the economy. It's important that Latin America understands, adopts, adapts, and takes a leading role in these changes to become the Singapores and the Koreas of the bioeconomy. Why should we do this? We are the ones who have the Amazon region. We are the ones who have a fantastic biodiversity. Wherever you go in Latin America, it's phenomenal as far as biodiversity, right? As the possibility of having biomass to act as a basic material for the production of energy or industrial materials of different kinds. So the big question is, it's not enough to have the biodiversity. You have to address obstacles, develop the skills to actually transform this into knowledge and wealth. And that's where you people come in. It is thanks to the intensive work that's being done in our universities and our research centers, in our technological institutes. In Metro, for example, being a metrology institute, has made tremendous progress in incorporating areas that are bio areas, right? It's thanks to this that we are hopeful that in the center in the Amazon and in many places in the country, we will see a bioeconomy flourish and be more and more important, and eventually add to our ability to export and to export value, to aggregate value to our products and become really global competitors. We are nowadays export 40% of our exports are of agricultural origin. And as far as goods that have high content in technology, 9%, which is about a half of what you have in the OECD countries. So there's a lot of room for growth there. And I think that biotechnology, bio-nanotechnology, and so on are the way to go. So these are the email addresses for Rodney, who was my partner in this preparation, and myself. Unfortunately, the system at Inmetro is down today, but you know, it will be working probably tomorrow. And this is a picture of the campus in Xerém. Xerém is a place that's part of another municipality called Duque de Caxias. And Inmetro has its main, all of its laboratories are located there, in spite of the fact that it does have an administrative headquarters in town. But we take the long drive, but the place is very beautiful. The labs are great. And you have an infrastructure both in terms of laboratories as well as qualified personnel, which is, I think, an asset to the country. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, have your questions to Professor Aragão? Okay.
I come from Europe, from Germany, and I'm fascinated on your attitude for gene technology modified crops. So in Europe, you can't sell it simply. There's only one country, I think, Spain, which allows now gene technology crops. Gene technology is much used in medical and pharmaceutical applications. Nobody knows it, by the way, from the common people in Europe. But the attitude to genetically modified crops is very, very bad.
Thanks for the question. I just came from a conference on sustainable development in Heidelberg, by the way, a beautiful city. And there I was brave enough to show this, all these graphs and pictures and so on. And of course, the first question that somebody asked me was, well, can you be sure that this is not hazardous to your health or something? And as you just said, I mean, most of the pharmaceutical industry is constructed upon statistics, right? There are many medical products which are tested in populations, and then you have statistics. You don't know exactly how, for example, something for bipolar disorder or whatever, anything that has to do with a mental problem, right? You know that a certain molecule will do something, but you don't really know how it acts. Despite this, you use it, right? And of course, a good psychiatrist is the one who can actually adapt that to the patient, right? But nobody's worried about the fact that it's still statistical, right? In this particular case, I think that statistics is in our favor. If you look at the map, you have so many million hectares devoted to this, and so many million people using genetically modified crops. And thus far, I have not seen, I'm not an expert, as I said, I'm a theoretical physicist, but I have not seen any specific correlation between some sort of disease and the consumption of one of those crops. So, as far as I know, in Brazil, we have something called CTN-Bio. It is a committee that decides. You actually have to have a license. You have to be allowed to put something in the market. So it's like it's a version as the FDA in the United States, for example. So you have to go through this in order to put a genetically modified product in the market. And there, many of members of the academy have seats in this committee. Not only the members of the academy, there are people who are not very favorable and so on. So there are endless discussions. But the fact is that Brazil has been profiting from the production and use of genetically modified crops. And this has had a tremendous impact in our agricultural production, in our exports. And I would say it has been feeding a number, quite sizable number of persons in the country. So thanks for the question once again.
I have to add, I'm not against genetically modified crops, so I think it's true, but it's sort what you say of getting for the common people to it and to accept it simply. And just like you said.
Again, I mean, thanks again for the remark. I think that a lot of the part of our work, besides writing papers and fighting referees, I'm saying this because I'm in the middle of a fight. You know, I received a report on a paper where I worked on this for a couple of years, and then the guy is saying nonsense. I'm furious. So this is part of the job. We have to, fight referees, publish, and so on, right? But there's yet another part which is extremely important and even more important nowadays, because we cannot afford to have scientific illiteracy in a world which is more and more scientific, right? It's digital. 99% of it is digital. It's going to be more and more biotechnological. And as you say, we have to do something about clarifying matters and so on. This academy has the merit of actually bringing these discussions here and writing reports and so on and so forth. For many years, people said, what is the academy for? Just welcoming new members. Well, this has changed. Nowadays, any question in Brazil, whether it's biodiversity, genetically modified crops, or a drug that people claim is good for cancer, right? This ends up resulting in a report which is elaborated by the best scientists that we can dispose of, okay? So I guess this kind of meeting is good because you can actually gain forces and keep pushing.
Thank you, Professor Aragão. I would like to invite Professor Deborah Fogel to come here with Professor Rolf Mentling from University of Kiel, Professor Esper Cavalheiro, the Federal de São Paulo, and Professor Aragão from FRJ. Just some comments. Yes, let's go there. Some comments about this meeting is to verify, define the end, the considerations that it is possibility to have an aperçu. Okay. Okay. I would like to have the opinion, the comments of Professor Esper Cavaliero. That is the left position here.
Okay. From my side, you have noticed that I enjoyed a lot the meeting. I had several questions and I've learned a lot, by the way. And I think that this is a good opportunity. We need to repeat more. There's two sides of this meeting. The first one is to put young Latin American people together. I think that this is one idea excellent to develop and to understand how science can be done and the fruits we can share with each other. The second point is to do this convergent aspect of the science, looking to science that go together to try to solve some human questions that are unsolved. And based on what we just heard from Professor Aragão, if we know only 5% of the place we live, there is a lot of space. There is a huge need for understanding and knowing where we are living and take advantage for the humanity in general. I think that there is a lot of possibilities. I enjoy very much. I think that you all will have a very bright future. The possibilities that you heard different things. I think that this is the right age to see how far we can go. We cannot understand all the details of all research that we heard here, but it was a fantastic opportunity to listen to this and see how enthusiastic. And you share what I said yesterday is the passion for the knowledge, the passion for the new things. I think that your brains are quite okay. For me, I was really happy. Thank you for sharing this with me.
Thank you, Esper. I would like to invite Aragão.
Well, since I spoke so much, this will be brief. But I think that meetings like this are extremely important, especially because you are young scientists. So this means that you have careers ahead of you. And you should get to know each other because in a few years, you're probably going to be leading science here in every Latin American country. And you need to know who does what because science is more and more interdisciplinary. You walk into a nanotechnology lab, you have lots of, I don't know, electronic microscopes, scanning microscopes, so on. You don't know whether you're going to find a chemist, a physicist, a biologist. You may find, a computer expert who is, somehow treating the data that's being collected. So this interdisciplinarity is almost a direct consequence of the fact that we are dealing with more and more complex problems. And the challenges are great. And we all believe that science is the way to deal with that. And so I thank you very much for listening. And I thank the organizers for inviting me because, in this day-to-day fight that we have in our countries for, resources, for fighting the bureaucracy and so on and so forth, this is like an oasis. It's like, a boost in terms of hope and enthusiasm. And it has just given me enough strength to fight that referee.
Thank you, Aragão. I would like to hear from Professor Hoff-Mantling. And it is important to thank Professor Hoff-Mantling because he comes to stay here for 1 month from Germany. And he is coming just yesterday. And I thought with him, and I said, you have a new things to your journey in Rio de Janeiro, that is follow the speakers and listen to the speakers, the young speakers in the Academy, Brazilian Academy of Science, and after prepare the comments. This is a surprise, but the second surprise, because in the last year, Hope was here, in the same situation, the same meeting, and external the opinion, the comments about this last meeting, and now I would like to hear from you.
Thanks, Vivalo. Much is said here about collaboration between Latin America countries, and yesterday we had a fascinating discussion about passion and utility in science. Very interesting subject. What I would come to, which has not been discussed here, is the subject is crosstalk of biology with other sciences. And I have to add to my background, I studied initially chemistry and made my PhDs in organic chemistry, structured chemistry and synthesis, and studied also biology, and then came to biochemistry, cell biology, molecular biology. So it's a long way. And I have heard lectures of you from people who started from mathematics. The first one was such a lecturer who came into biochemistry. And we heard yesterday, for example, or in the last section, for example, that from biology you go to a statistic and so on. And I would encourage you to do though. Of course, you can't be an expert in any field, but you are young, you are going into your career, and it's a good idea to broaden what you have educated with another subject. So to take into account, to use techniques, tools, but also concepts from other sciences not related to biology. And those who come from the other sciences are invited to learn from the concepts in biology. Today there was also an interesting remark in the morning that in biology you have no or only few hypotheses. It's in fact real. Yes, I thought about it. It's not only evolution theory by Darwin. We have other concepts, but in fact, when you go into biology, you first observe, and then you have sometimes idea about a concept in general. When you come from physics, I think it's quite different. You have only a few observations, and you start a concept, and then you prove or disprove your concept by experiments. So it's quite different in biology. And for those coming from biology, I would encourage them to make more concepts. And from those coming from physics or informatics, I would say understand those in biology, because the biology deals with facts which are also individual and does not fit so well in your concepts like in physics. Okay, so these were my remarks, and I enjoyed the meeting very much, I must say. Very good talks, very interesting, and it's broad. It's a conference which is not focused on a single subject, but it's really broad. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Hof, and I say to the next year again. Yes.
Just brief comments, because I've been speaking the last day. So just as well, for me, it was a great pleasure, and so I learned a lot being here these 2 days with you. Thank you very much for teaching me about all these things that you mentioned and you said to us here. And also, I would say that we have to construct a network more tight between our countries. So Jose mentions that probably his model cannot be applied to other countries, but I almost can assure that our problems are so similar that we can use, and you can collaborate much more. And so probably most of the problems that we are facing in our specific place can be the solutions that we are trying to create for our own problems in Brazil or elsewhere in Latin America could be a little bit adapt, fine-tuned that we can use in other places. So I guess that we need to devote a little bit of our time and start to collaborate much more between us. So, and then just hearing the speak of Dr. Bifano today, that was very inspiring. So he had produced a lot of material, so in Spanish. So I don't think we need to redo it again. So we have to construct like a repository that all us could put things there so that we can share, so we can save time instead of everyone rediscovering, and preparing new materials. So I guess that we have to find a way to be more collaborative. And also, just another example, so we have several postgraduate programs around. You should create networks between our programs. So one student from Brazil could migrate to Mexico to do and to. So we have to look, closer by to, to our neighborhood. So instead of just keeping looking to US, of course we need to establish collaboration with the north part of the globe, but we do need to to see each other and to think about solutions just looking closer by. And so I just want to finish with this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deborah, for your comments.
I was asking Vivaldo for another second because I would like to, on behalf of everyone, to thank Kenya and all the staff for facilitating our life here during this period. It was discreet and efficient. So I think this is very, very good. I thank you and the staff to give us such a good period here. Thank you very much.
This is not correct from Esper, because it's my task to thank to Kenya.
On behalf of everyone
Yes,
here.
yes.
Yes.
I would like first to thank you that I can participate of this meeting, this discussion, and I see that today, these 2 days, it was possible to verify that you have showed a transposition of the wall that limited the specialization in science, but it was possible here just during 2 days to verify that the biology could see, could look, could work in another fashion, the fashion that you could see for us, was the engineers and the physicians, chemists, and physicists. There is no here. Yeah, there is the physicist here with us.
Nobody's perfect.
Yeah, a very good meeting in this sense. I would like to thank Kenya, that all time is present, because I'm out of here. I'm in the lab, and sometimes I receive a phone to say it's important to stay here just to verify this or organize these next 3 days. Thank you very much, because it's, my work is in here with to us in HOLAC is soft. It's very good this. The second, I would like to thank Deborah Fogel and Flavia Gomes that helped me to organize this meeting, to decide the composition of the sections, and to discuss the idea to have the biology and cross-talk with the other science. Naturally, to thank my colleagues that are in the table, Khalil for the first morning, to participate with the experience, the seniority, and to talk with you about this during these 2 days discussions. Thank you very much. it's not true for tomorrow morning, yeah? Bom, tchau, obrigado.
Thank you. And this from someone who is